Órale. Amigos, and welcome to the Familia FFP podcast. I am your host, Jorge Martin, and Familia. I'm fired up on this Wednesday. Fired up on this Wednesday night. It's a good time. We are live on YouTube. I got some friends with me to join with me and talk a little fantasy football. But Familia, first off, please make sure you're giving us a like and subscribe on YouTube at our Familia FFP. I would really appreciate it. Se lo agradecemos un millón. First off, I'm going to start up, Familia. This week, we've got not just one, but two invitados de lujo that I'm just so excited about. They're return guests from last offseason, and after the Super Bowl, I wanted to bring them on to just be, to be able to talk about this subject that we're about to break out. But I'm going to start off back on the East Coast. El Hombre, you know him as at Eagle Dan FF, Dan Turner. He is the co-host of the wonderful Champions Round podcast at Champions Round on Twitter with Stephanie Smalls, our amiga of the show, and he does some writing for that site as well as In Between Media, also amigos of the show. And since I grew up hating the Cowboys, I'll call out that he is a member of Eagles Nation. So fly, Eagles, fly. Dan, muchas gracias for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Jorge. It's a real pleasure to be on with you again, talking some zero RB football, especially after what went down last year and with Cal's. I guess it'll be a lot of fun. I can't wait.
Awesome. Well, Cal, you guys know him as Calvin and Hobby. Cal Shoemake. He's just, these guys are both awesome. And I can't say enough, about both of them. Cal's a writer, creates incredible video content for Dynasty League football at DL Football. And he's midstream on a fantastic series called the Dynasty Refinery that's getting a great follow this offseason. He's getting some big, heavy hitters, bigger than me. So, and speaking of hitters, he and I are both pretty pissed off in Major League Baseball that it's on a pause. So, Cal, let's get a little ticked off. We could be a little ticked off a second. We'll raise a cold one or something to baseball, lighting a veladora. So, Please get baseball back. We need something to distract us until except for the combine and the NFL draft. But mis amigos, welcome to the Familia FFP podcast. As we'd say in Spanish, bienvenidos, porque están en su casa. You are in your home. Make yourself at home. Gracias for joining us. Thank you so much.
Of course. And hey, congratulations, by the way. Like, I will never forget sending you the congrats about the Super Bowl victory. And your response was, wow, I think I'm too sober right now. Always love that response.
Oh, man. You know what? It was so funny. I was so tensed up at the end of the game. I didn't want to get up to get another beer or something. I wanted another one, but I just didn't. I was so nervous and things were breaking right. So I didn't want to get a little too crazy. But yeah, it was incredible. The Rams won. We're still on a high out here in LA. And hopefully just I'm not going to get greedy. I just want Aaron Donald back. I just want Cooper back, Cooper Kupp healthy, and hopefully Cam Akers does it. Keeps getting better. But no, it's awesome. And mis amigos, you guys can help me break some news that just came out on Twitter for calling out the Familia FFP podcast. Fantasy Points Media Group has a subsidiary of Fantasy Points has asked us to be a part of their media group. So I'm thrilled. Ben Kukanis a little bit ago, he gave us a shout out and announced the agreement. And yeah, I'm pumped. Some heavy hitters. I've gotten to be friends with a couple of people on there. Edwin Porras is kind of like my compadre. Grant Barfield has been on with me, and we talk about baseball all the time via text and phone. So just really looking forward to just keep growing this podcast. So as you guys know about trying to grow shows. So thanks for being a part of this announcement, mis amigos.
The Fantasy Points Media team got better today, and I love to see it. And congrats on that news. But yeah, I think they're getting a great person and great fantasy analyst. And seriously, congratulations on the news for you. And then I think it's great for them too. So that's awesome.
Absolutely. You know what Cal said. Actually, Steph and I were talking about, because we're talking about you coming on the show, And like, Jorge, you're probably the nicest guy on Fantasy Fair. Like no one can say anything bad. Like you're always like, you're having so much fun with podcasts. You're always like trying to help out. Like no one deserves it more than you do. It's fantastic that they picked you up. Like they got so much better. Like you guys deserve it. I'm so proud of you.
Well, thank you. And you know what, behind the scenes, you guys have been, just, part of, as you guys and the Thieves have been just great, just great supporters. Number one, you guys put out great stuff yourselves. So you make me want to get better. So that's number one. And just number two, everybody just, you guys have been such great, I mean, not just cheerleaders, but I mean, you guys have just been, given great, support. Cal, I mean, just both of you. It's been awesome. I can't thank you enough. You guys have had me on your shows. We've shared screens plenty of times. So incredible. So I want to talk about sharing screens and sharing stuff, but I want to ask you guys something particular about what you're working on right now. Now, Dan, you got a little bit, you got several of us a little bit jealous when you got to be at the Senior Bowl. Yes. So beyond getting Howie Roseman asking you for a photo op. So beyond that, by the way, check his Twitter account and you'll see that as the ID photo. Mm-hmm. But seriously, what were some of the highlights for you from that Senior Bowl?
I think personally for me, one of the highlights was getting to interview the players. Getting to just get to that ground level, just see them as people, talk to them about how hard they worked and what their aspirations were, and realizing like we sometimes take fantasy football too seriously, and we always yell these plays, but these are just people. They're regular guys. They've been trying really hard their entire lives to get to this point, and seeing them with their dreams in reach, and knowing that a good performance at the Senior Bowl basically can decide that their future. So it was really awesome to see. I had some really good interviews. I interviewed Calvin Austin, Bo Melton, a couple of guys like that. So it was really awesome to get to know them more at a personal level for me. And obviously, watching the practices and the game, and just seeing, just how much, talent that there is in this class. This class has gotten a lot of hate, for me included. I didn't think much of this class, but, seeing the performances down there and really looking at it, this class is maybe not as top heavy as others, but it's pretty deep. There are going to be a lot of guys that are drafted later on that are going to perform. So I'm really excited to see where a lot of these guys go.
Awesome. And you know what? I love that. I always equate it back to, when you're hearing you talk about it, it reminds me of, the baseball days where I would see those guys at AAA and just kind of on the precipice of, I'd see them in spring training, and that they're close, and you could see that in them, and you see the talent, and you see that dream about to come true. And it's just so special. It's just so special. Mm-hmm. It gives you a little extra rooting interest for that. I'm sure Calvin Austin is going to be on plenty of your Dynasty rosters.
Mm-hmm. As many as I can get him on.
Is he going to run the fastest at the combine this week?
I think he will. Yeah, I think he will. I don't think it'll be a surprise, because I think a lot of people expect him to run fast. I think it'll be faster than people think he'll run, though.
Oh man,
I might actually, I might actually go on the record and think he might challenge for John Ross's record. I think that's how fast he'll run.
Ooh, 4.22, baby, 4.22.
I think he has it in him if he runs well.
Love it. And Cal, you've had something awesome. And I teased it a little bit at the beginning. Dynasty Refinery has just been so eye-opening in so many ways. I mean, for me, one of the coolest things, because as I'm getting more into rankings, doing rankings, I dabbled in it last year. This year I'm going to do it full time. But when Heath Cummings mentioned that Dynasty as well as redraft rankings, I mean, it was just kind of like moment. What's been your highlights of that great one? By the way, follow it at DL Football on YouTube.
Yeah. I'm so glad. Thank you for the kind words. I appreciate that. The feedback has been really good. I sort of played with this concept of how I was going to try to pull information out, because I wanted to do something that I thought was interesting. I wanted it to be different enough that it was something that I wanted to, I guess kind of invest in and think that, especially for new players, or like you said, like everything ranging from new players, but all the way to you're trying to put together projections and rankings. And I want to bring in just like some people with some very specific skills of what I perceive them as being very, very good at, and ways that I've learned from them. And I wanted to have them on and interview them. And it's gone really well. And the one with Heath Cummings was so much fun. I've done a few shows with him before, but on this one, just deep diving in on the projections. And there were some aha moments for me too. Like, I think that's what's so cool. I interviewed Adam Harstead, who's just brilliant. And that's another one like it's just so cool to go check out, because he makes you think. If nothing else, you're going to think. And, I was brought up with the saying, you can give a man a fish and feed him for a day, or you can teach a man to fish and feed him for the rest of his life. And I think that is the goal, is to teach people how to fish through that series.
And it really is. I love that. I love that. And oh my goodness. And Dan, also Champions Round. I mean, you guys just had an episode. I think it was last night, right? You and Steph. Or Buen Amiga, the show. What are some of the, I mean, we could talk about this at the end of the show, but I mean, you want to tease anything for the off season that you're working on?
The one last week was awesome.
Oh, thank you.
2 weeks ago. When was it I was on? That's what
that was last week. Last week it was awesome. I didn't want to say anything because Steph's probably watching, but no, I'm kidding. No, that was a fun show. No, right now we're in the middle of our combine series. We're just going over, every position. Basically, that's going to be debuting probably later in the week. And then really it's really building out our Dynasty portfolio pretty much. Like, it's still a newer company, so we don't have as much as we'd like, but it's really exciting to basically build it from the ground up. And hopefully, we'll be going over free agency. When the draft comes, we'll probably do like a live draft or something like that. But it's really exciting to see the kind of things that we're going to be putting out going forward.
No, awesome. Well, one thing you guys have both put out is, I love that you're both zealots for zero RB. Oh, but first off, I forgot to ask the combine. Anything you guys are looking for? I know you mentioned, Dan, you mentioned you're expecting. I'd love that. We'd all love to see somebody break John Ross's record. Anything? Is there one thing that you guys are looking for each this week at the combine?
I'm looking for one, if the senior receivers can build on their Senior Bowl performances. But really, I'm interested to see how well Malik Willis throws. I think, at the Senior Bowl, we all saw that he could run, but we all knew that he could run. I mean, we know he's probably the most athletic of the QBs. We didn't really get to see as much throwing as we would like. So I think that's really important. That's really the major question mark everyone has on him. So if he does a really good performance there, he'll probably be, shooting up draft boards, and will be the obvious number one overall pick in Superflex drafts. So that's what I'm looking for.
How about you, Cal?
Two things. One, the quarterbacks. I mean, just to see how they sort out. So kind of piggybacking on what Dan said there, because I don't know that people, even NFL front offices, have their board fully set on the quarterback and the rankings they have for them and who they're targeting and who they want, if anyone, right? I think that's kind of what, that is interesting now, is a lot of the mock drafts, the quarterbacks seem to be falling into like later in the first round. And so as information comes out and they get inside information, does that change? Does anybody stand out and you start seeing like, somebody get into that top 10, or does it continue to go the other way after getting a chance to see them? I think it could go either way. This season is very interesting, especially from Dynasty perspective. But I'm going to be listening to the quotes from the GMs and the owners too, because that is the other thing that on my interview with Sigmund Bloom, we're talking about deciphering the offseason news cycle that can be so hard. And he talked about how the combine is one of the ways that historically you can glean something from. Like, yes, there's going to be coach speak, but there's a lot of truth if you can cipher through it in the combine and in the news. So looking for that.
Yeah, kind of sorting through the BS. I think we all love to see that. But yeah, I'm gonna, it's kind of trite, but to talk about it. But I do want to see the 40s and see how fast some of these, the running backs and the receivers go. And just seeing how much, seeing what that does to because you see the draft boards already, and seeing if that, you know, shoots some guys up. Obviously, I don't think we're going to see a running back in the first round, but you know, if a Chris Olave runs in the low 4.3s, does that push him to the top of boards or something like that? So that to me is that's exciting. Wow, I love it.
Absolutely. Everyone says that 40s don't matter, but yet if they run fast, they're going in the first round.
Yeah, exactly. Well, first round. So I teased it just now, 0 RB. And I'm kind of curious. So this is going to be something where I want to learn on this because I've been tempted. I've been curious about it. But that's why I wanted to have just kind of a dedicated episode. I'm going to kind of flip flop back and forth from between you guys. But you know, when you guys revealed to me that you were big proponents of this strategy, it got me thinking of this type. And then we saw this season happen where we saw CMC and Derrick Henry among so many running backs who got taken in the first couple of rounds and get hurt and miss a big chunk or most of 2022. So what happens if people avoid those running backs in the early rounds? And that's why I'm bringing you guys on to kind of talk to that and kind of let me know if this strategy is building momentum for 2022. So kind of starting off with both with each. Dan, I'll start with you.
Sure.
When did you change to 0 RB, and was there a breaking point that pushed you over?
Yes. So I was pretty much a traditional drafter. I started playing fantasy in 2005. So I switched to 0 RB around 2013 when I won my fantasy championship with my starting running backs being Danny Woodhead and Fred Jackson, who neither of them were starting at the time. And I realized that there are other options besides taking them in the first round. And that was, you know, gospel for forever. You had to take a running back the first round or you sucked at playing fantasy. And from that point on, I just realized, you know, there are such better and more versatile options. If you don't take a running back in the first round, and that gives you a leg up on people that follow the more traditional method. Not that either method is wrong. I'm not here to, you know, say that. Just for me personally, I just enjoy the options I have without picking running backs in the first.
How about you, Cal?
Yeah, I guess the first thing I want to say is there's a lot of ways to win. If you had happened to take Jonathan Taylor in the first round, you felt pretty good about that too, obviously. So, you know, injuries happen. Injuries are part of it. That's not you can draft a wide receiver that lets you down and all that stuff too. But I started coming around to it actually back in, I think it was 2011, 2012, something like that. And at the time it was either do the opposite or upside down drafting. It's had a lot of different names over the years. Like this isn't, I know like sometimes we think it's a new concept. It's not a new concept. Been around for a long time. And really it's just kind of zigging when the market is zagging. And that's why it became prevalent before. I think now it's a matter of like if you look at your roster as a whole and you look at all the positions and the flexes and all that stuff, like I think so many times we draft for, we got to fill this spot. We got to fill this spot. I'm not anti-drafting an RB in the first or second round. It's just more of there were ones that I felt more comfortable with as far as wide receivers in the first round. And that's just always been the way that I like to do it. Like getting a tight end, you know, I just always end up thinking, okay, here are some really safe wide receivers or tight ends. I feel like the margin for error feels better. And there's been a lot of work on that. And it's ran true in terms of like a lot of the statistics that are run. But it feels like if a running back's going to crater, he's going to crater really hard. Or it feels like a greater chance that he's going to crater. A lot of wide receivers, as long as they don't get hurt, man, I mean, we kind of know what role they're going to have those first 3, 4, 5 rounds of wide receivers. After that, it gets sketchy. But yeah, I guess that's a general how I got to that, or you know, how I started thinking about it.
That's amazing that it was like 10 years ago that happened, because I mean, I've always loved wide receivers since my first draft. But I did take a running back the very first draft I did. So 1990, Christian Okoye, who let me down. So maybe there was something to be said. And I do consider myself more of a hero RB guy. But mostly because running back, I've kind of looked at running backs as kind of my version of Linus's security blanket. How did you guys break yourself of that security blanket? Cal, you can kick off on this one.
I think the hardest part is leaving a draft and you hate your running backs. That's the hardest part of zero RB is you leave the draft. And like this year, gosh, I left so many drafts where my best running back was James Robinson. And this is before Travis Etienne got hurt and like, and all of that. And again, not that it was predicting that was going to happen, but it was just like, I was a backup running back was my best running back that gave me any sort of hope. Right. But then also it worked out where I went really hard on Elijah Mitchell after that first week in Fab and or trying to trade for him, in dynasty leagues where he was already on and somebody hoping I could go ahead and draft him because I believed in him. And I think that's the thing is like you're just sort of narrowing if you leave the draft with 3 really good wide receivers, a tight end, and a quarterback that you really believe in, you're really leaving yourself where, okay, all I have to think about is filling this running back spot. And your focus can go there. Your FAP can go there. Your trade talks can go there. What those, it kind of focuses that in for me a little bit, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. How about Dan? Dan, how about you?
I agree with Cal. Basically, how I do it, I think that they're like I said before, like going, having the 3 receivers, the quarterback and tight end, and then having to make do with running back is fine. Basically, how I play it is it's basically what slot gets me the most points. Pretty much like it's a point total thing. So if I get 3 elite receivers and they all score anywhere between 17 and 25 points every single week, then that's something I don't have to worry about. Like Cal said, like we know which receivers are going to be the number 1 guys on their team. We know their roles. We know who the target hogs are, and everything. And then once we get to the later rounds, I just got to find those running backs that'll get me 10 points. It doesn't matter how they do it. If they can get me 10 points and the rest of the team does what I drafted them to do and crushes it, then I'll be fine. So that's pretty much how I look at it, honestly.
Okay. Love it. So I wanted to, this is what has me considering this is the injury attrition factor that happens at the running back position. Because last year, only 7 of the top 24 running backs in PPR played all 17 games. And only 1 that played 16 missed week 18. That was Joe Mixon. But of the top 24 receivers, only 2, Chris Godwin and T. Higgins, played less than 16 games. So is the health factor a primary reason to go to zero RB? And could there be other reasons beyond that? I'll start with Dan. Dan.
Yeah. Okay. I personally don't like using the injury thing as an excuse because injury can happen to anybody in the NFL. I do think that there is more injury attrition to running backs. I think once you have a running back that gets injured, rarely do they come back and remain that way, especially, for someone like Christian McCaffrey, who's basically been the entire Carolina Panthers offense for a number of years. The body can only take so many, carries and catches and stuff like that. So I do think it is on the safer side to go another direction, just based on the fact that even when healthy, you had some guys that just, didn't really produce. I mean, of all the running backs, like you said, there were only a couple of running backs lasted all 17 games, and of the guys that played 17 games, they weren't that good. You had guys like Myles Gaskin. Yeah, he played all 17 games. It only got you 173 points. So, I mean, if it's healthy and not producing, does it really matter? It doesn't. So I would rather go with the opportunity for more, I guess, for lack of a better term, like the upside, the point upside, rather than the prospect of having to rely on someone to play all 17 games, which, as we know, as running backs doesn't always happen, and 2, thereafter performing well enough to warrant the kind of draft capital that is going to need to be spent on them to warrant that slot.
Yeah, the health is definitely part of it for me. Like, it's part of the factor for sure. I feel like look at the way they break down so quickly, right? I mean, like it makes sense that a running back with the pounding they take, with everything, that it just makes sense. I don't know. To be honest, I don't know the stats behind that. You mentioned 7 of the 24. That is really fascinating that it was only 7 that played the 17 games. And that's definitely part of it. I definitely, though, for me, like the idea that I can get wide receiver ones potentially 3 rounds into a draft and have 3 guys that a lot of people probably would think of as their wide receiver one. I'm like, that seems like it could be an advantage if I do that. And like Dan said, like just it feels like when you fill your roster out, the amount of points you're going to get is so much better. And even like I think in dynasty startups, what the productive struggle strategy, a lot of times that people talk about, a lot of times it's this where you're drafting wide receivers, you're drafting tight ends, you're drafting quarterbacks maybe, and you're saving the running backs for later. And so many times I think I'm going into a draft and I'm going to struggle. I'm like just picking these wide receivers, and those teams end up being really competitive early because, you take those wide receivers and you can really make those kind of picks can really make a difference because it doesn't matter who scores the points for you. It matters how many points you score.
And that's the thing. It's that's where I'm kind of coming to the party. It's like, it doesn't matter where you get the points from. Mm-hmm. I mean, and Dan, you talked about earlier winning a championship with kind of, as we would say in Spanish, basura running backs. I won a 14 team championship. I had Chubb, who in week 17 disappointed. The guys who actually won it for me were AJ Dillon and Jarrett Patterson. So, and Patterson, just because I handcuffed Antonio Gibson, and but really, when you look at the fact that I had Deebo Samuel was my guy, and so that was the big win, and plus the guy I played had the worst week of the season. So, but for you guys, 2021, it was kind of different season for for the wide receiver position. Some guys who delivered. There were definitely some guys who delivered. Obviously, Cooper Kupp it was a later pick. Debo, another later pick. Jamar Chase, and Devontae Adams was a guy who delivered. But what worked in 2021, and maybe what was a miss? Dan, kick us off on this one.
So what worked in 2021 was not having a first round running back. No.
Yes. Unless it was Jonathan Taylor.
If you had Cooper Kupp and Jonathan Taylor, it worked for you in 2021. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you probably didn't win. No.
I had a couple of best ball lineups that I had that. So
right?
That was good.
But I think honestly, if you had depth in your fantasy thing, in your fantasy roster, I think a lot of people don't really see handcuffs as an important part of your bench. And I think the 21 proved that maybe it is worthwhile to, take a bench spot or 2 or 3 and go after the handcuff of some of these guys, these high profile guys that, that are getting up there. And, they obviously not going to get you like the same numbers as a top guy, like a Derrick Henry. They're not going to get you like Derrick Henry type numbers or anything like that. But, in the right system, they're going to get you enough points to survive on. So, if you're going into like the last couple of rounds and you're just probably going to throw a pick away on someone that probably wasn't even going to play or something like that, I definitely take a shot and, go after like the Madisons or, the players like that are behind these awesome running backs. And obviously you don't hope that anyone gets injured, but it's better to be prepared than not, because what happened was last year when everyone got hurt, then there was really nothing left in the on waivers or anything like that. So if you missed out on the running backs and then the replacements, you were basically stuck playing nobody. So I think it's worth it to even if they don't produce at all. I mean that's a risk worth taking. It's worth a slot to be covered just in case like disaster strikes.
All right, so that we'll get okay. So that Cal, you go.
So I just pulled up as you were asking that question. I just pulled up it was an industry draft that had a bunch of guys in the industry, and I just looked up what my strategy was there because I remember I went 0 RB, but I couldn't remember how late. The first running back I took was in round 6. It was James Robinson, like I mentioned. I in round 9, I took Zach Moss, so swing and a miss. Naheem Hines, swing and a miss. Jerick McKinnon, McKissick was after that, 11. Tevin Coleman, Brown was after that. Like a lot of swings and misses on running back in that. But I took a lot of swings at running back, and my batting average at some point, like it will vary year to year, but a lot of times, like I'll hit on at least one of those, if not two. And then therefore, like, again, it just focuses it narrows down what I have to focus on. Like I know on this team, I've got to find running backs because I had Kelsey, I got Aaron Rodgers late. I had AJ Brown and CeeDee Lamb and T Higgins, and I had Judy, who flamed out, I guess. But then I like I said, went hard after Elijah Mitchell, and it was just that became an easy decision for me. How much do I spend on Elijah Mitchell? Well, all of it, because it was, and literally I spent 100 out of 100 and got him, and that was a great deal for me, right? So, it's not every one of those wide receivers are a hit. Not everyone, but I just think, again, the batting average at the top on wide receivers, I felt good about that. And then, I'll take some swings late. And I think the hard part is like just trying it. And when you try it and you look at your team and you're like, oh crap, I don't like my running backs, but then just let it play out. You're going to find running backs you like. You're going to, I promise.
Yeah.
Oh, we're going to get into that. Go ahead, Dan.
Just to follow up on Cal's point, I know we're going to get into it later, but this is an example I really want to show now. So Rashard Penny was the 42nd in total points for PPR last year, right? He had 12.2 points per game. He only played 10 games. He was 42, right? So he wasn't drafted. No one drafted him, to be honest. Like he was either like a last round, pickup, or he went out undrafted, whatever. So Ezekiel Elliott, obvious first round pick, right? You couldn't get him if you didn't pick him in the first round. Right, he only scored 2 more points per game than Rashad Penny. Think about that.
Oh wow!
You have draft capital for both, and you're missing out on in the season on average 34 points. 2 point per game, sample. So I mean, you like stuff like that. Obviously, like Cal said, you have to take a lot of swings, and there's gonna be some misses. There's gonna be running backs that don't pan out in this, and going into that, you understand that though, like the risk is built in with zero running back theme. Mm-hmm. So that just something that illustrates the kind of value you can get if you take those swings. They're not all going to be hits, but when you do hit, that's the kind of thing that helps you win.
Plus, you mentioned, mentioning Penny. I think he won a lot of people leagues though with his fantasy, with the way he did in the fantasy playoffs. So, no, that's pretty incredible. So, when it comes to the strategy, I mean, you obviously got to hit on your first round pick. So when I looked at ADP from 2021, there were two receivers who were first round picks: Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill. Devontae Adams performed, especially in the second half of the season and during the fantasy playoffs. Tyreek Hill had his usual boom games here and there, but he, put up some clunkers during the fantasy playoffs. What was this? Were most teams just kind of that zero running back teams that won this year? Were they kind of focused on getting Adams in early, maybe Justin Jefferson, and then kind of sprinkling in a Cooper Kupp and Debo later? I mean, what was the winning formula? Dan, start us off.
Yeah, I believe it was something like that. Obviously, for any time, in order to win, it really helps if the first pick you make, does well. I mean, that's not that's not like breaking news or anything, but it's definitely, going early and often at those receivers. So if you end up with an Adams and maybe someone like a Tyreek Hill that maybe didn't perform as well as we thought, or even like a Terry McLaurin who who definitely didn't perform up to expectations, but was okay. And then in the third, fourth round, you end up with like Cooper Kupp and T Higgins, for example. You're still gonna, obviously, like it's really just about taking those swings and making sure that you get like those top guys from with the data available and making those good selections. So it really is just doing your homework on it and just taking those guys that you expect to perform well in the first couple of rounds.
How about you, Cal?
Yeah, so my strategy was basically Travis Kelce or bust in the first round. That was always my go-to because I was most confident that he would be a difference maker at tight end, and I thought, and he was. I mean, he finished second. He wasn't as good as Mark Andrews. That was obviously the big prize in as far as tight ends in the draft by ADP, but I was most confident that that's a guy that I'm going to be able to put in my lineup. And every week, just about, I'm going to be confident that position, I'm going to give more points than you. And that's really the only pick that I think in the first round that I felt you could pretty confidently say that about. And then it was filling in those wide receivers from there, from the second round on. And AJ, unfortunately, Calvin Ridley was what I loved, and that one didn't work out quite as well in that second round. But AJ Brown was one that I ended up with a good bid, and obviously he had some injuries and things like that, but that was a guy that had plenty of weeks that also really helped you too. And Stephon Diggs was one. I mean, he was up and down, but he was fairly consistent. Had some good games. So yeah, that second round was kind of where I was trying to get that upside, consistent wide receiver, and then that's the Justin Jeffersons and Chases and things like that. After that were some of the bigger hits for me, I guess you'd say.
Oh, those were huge, and I put together kind of a chart on our show doc there, talking about showing some of the guys who were hits. Devontae I mentioned that he was a hit and he performed during the fantasy playoffs. DK Metcalf only performed in week 17 where he blew up. I think he was the wide receiver 2 behind Jamar Chase. Jefferson was fantastic all season in round 3. Round 4 was kind of tough. A lot of injury, a lot of underperformance. Guys who were just out. But round 5, you had Cooper Kupp. You had I came this close. The team that I won with, I came this close to having one pick away from having Debo and Cooper Kupp. So it wouldn't have mattered. It wouldn't have mattered who my running backs were if I got those guys. But you had Cooper Kupp and Deonte, and then round 6 you had Jamar Chase. So does this strategy just personify the fact that you're going to get value? You can get value throughout the first 10 rounds of picks. Because Debo was at ADP, he was round 8. So how much is that playing into it, that you're looking at the value that's really out there throughout the draft? Dan, start.
I think it's a big part, honestly. I think, everyone is always saying how deep wide receivers are. And those of us that do zero running back, that's an advantage for us because we can pretty much go any round and find a guy that has the ability, go up to round, say 8 or whatever. That has the ability to be a top 10, top 15 guy. And if you are able to, and obviously there's inherent risk. You don't know. No one predicted Cal really was going to step away from football or anyone's going to get hurt. That's for any player in fantasy. But you do like I said, you do the homework and you hit those guys, and then you're set. If you have the ability to get that cup and then go get Debo 4 rounds later. And so it's something that you can't do with a running back. If you want a running back you're going to have to take them in the first round or 2. And meanwhile, you got these guys, and no one thought that Cooper Kupp was going to have the year that he had, but just the opportunity for him to be there at that spot, was something that works to our advantage.
So first shout out to our amigo of the show, Rado Heat Craig. ¿Cómo estamos? Hello. Salud, brother. Cal, how about you?
So I guess I just thought of this analogy. I've never thought of this before. I'm gonna say it. If it doesn't make any sense, Dan, you just tell me if it doesn't make sense, okay? Or Jorge, you just tell me. But every now and then you'll have the debate about should I look at bye weeks or should I not look at bye weeks on my team? It's I'd rather have all my bye weeks in one and just take the loss from there, right? So I think that's kind of in essence the theory. It's okay, I'm gonna be really solid in all these areas. And I'm just going to have running backs where I'm just going to take the L's there. I'm going to try and get a positional advantage over you at quarterback, wide receiver, tight end, and even at flex. That's the part people forget is that you also can fill a wide receiver there in your flex position that can be significantly better than somebody's, if they're waiting till the 9th round to take their flex because they're trying to fill it out in order or something and on their for their team, you got an advantage there too. It's just I'm going to have a disadvantage at first at running back, and I know I'm going to have that, and I'm going to have some misses. So I'm going to, among the wide receivers and maybe the tight end, whatever it is, have to deal with injuries like anybody else. You get in the season, and but I know I'm going to have a disadvantage at running back. I know that's where I need to focus, and but I'm going to have an advantage, in my opinion, everywhere else.
I love that thought process, and that analogy definitely made sense because, that's the thing. Do you want an L because you chose it, or do you want an L because fate, had a guy tear an ACL, pull a hamstring, any of those things, tweak an ankle. So all of those things, I guess it's the whole, taking control of your own destiny as opposed to
it's definitely an advantage going into drafts, knowing exactly the plan. A lot of people take drafts as they come, and that's a great strategy. But knowing, okay, here's what I need. We're going to need the wide receivers here, here, and here, and we're going to forget running backs until this point, and then we'll see what's left, and then take those 3, 4, whatever running backs, and then go from there. So I think going in with a set idea of what you're doing is really helpful.
So Cal, you touched on something with Kelsey or bust on this one, and this is a question that I had a little bit later, but I'm going to kind of mix it in with the next one. Considering the fact that there were a fair number of wide receiver misses in rounds 2 to 4, as we talked about, for a variety of reasons. Some just underperformed, maybe they were overdrafted. Is a part of this to grab that early tight end in that range in rounds 1 to 4 to get to really try and solidify that positional advantage. Is that a great recommendation?
For me, absolutely. And I think last year I was really confident that there were going to be 3 difference makers, and one of them wasn't. Darren Waller was not the difference maker, obviously, that we want him to be. He was the one that I think maybe I had the most questions about going into the season. And then Kittle, there's injury history there. And so that's why for me, I narrowed it down to okay, I really want to end up with Travis Kelce because he's got Pat Mahomes throwing to him. He's been a beast. He's been a stud. Anything can happen to anybody. But I'm he's going to be among the target leaders in the NFL, and he's a tight end. So I'm really confident in that. Next year is going to be really interesting to see because, Kyle Pitts enters the chat there, in a much bigger way. People are talking about the demise of Kelce. I don't think they're quite ready for that yet. I understand moving him in Dynasty, but yeah, that. So the wide receivers in that round 2 to 4, that's really what I was trying to hit. And I actually got to where Deonte Johnson was my 4th round pick. I was willing to take him ahead of ADP because I thought he was a guy that I knew he's going to get peppered with targets. I believe in the talent. He's a guy that I think is very underrated. So that I almost blocked off. Okay, I'm going to get him in round 4 because again, I'm taking him ahead of ADP, but I was confident. So I kind of knew I was going to get him there, unless somebody was crazy about him, more than me. But that didn't happen much. And yeah, the 2 to 3, and you're right. Ridley was one that I definitely had some misses on. AJ Brown had good weeks and bad weeks, but I'm fine with that. Consistency is a myth. And Terry McLaurin was another one that I loved, but there was just so many right there. The CeeDee Lambs and I'm looking back through a couple of these drafts and the Keenan Allens of the world. There were a few there that in that territory that I felt confident about. And, while other people were right there drafting Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I felt much better about drafting somebody, that I knew was Keenan Allen was going to be a target hog. I knew that. So
how about you, Dan? Is the early tight end your strategy, or
it depends on who's there. Usually it is because I think positional domination is something that I strive for. And, with the way tight end landscape is, how we always say tight end's very deep every year and always ends up being 4 guys that actually, are different every single time. I always want that.
And we all want it to happen. It's like we're willing it into the world.
We're all trying. Yeah. This isn't working so far. But definitely, if you can get like a Kelsey or a Kittle or someone like that will give you, that nothing's guaranteed, but pretty much guaranteed advantage in position, that's just one step closer, to winning your league. And I think it's good because you have these high picks and running backs, and back to it, like Cal's like CEH and Keenan Allen example. If CEH has a bad game, he's getting like 2 points. If Keenan Allen has a bad game, he's getting you at least 10, because he might have like 4 catches for 60 yards. Yeah, that's a bad game by his standards, but it's still getting you more points. You have to worry about like the floor too. And that's something, running backs have bad games. They have really bad floors, especially in those middle rounds. Like you're taking shots at guys that we don't know like what their positions on the depth chart or how they're going to be used or something. But that those guys that are going to be number ones on their team or number twos, and the quarterback's going to throw to them. So that's something you have to consider as well. But definitely, a tight end, if I can get one early, I'll definitely go and grab him and worry about the rest later, because I know for a fact that in that spot, I'm going to be beating everyone else most weeks.
I'll go as far as to say, for me, like it's crucial. Like I think it's a crucial part of it, because you don't want to go in with now, or I got running backs and my tight end sucks too, right? Like I don't want to go into it with that. Like it's all about trying to get the positional advantage of these other places, and tight end is one that is and still is. You've got to have that, and I love the people that are just going to wait, because it's like, okay, good, I'm going to definitely have an advantage over you. Go ahead, that's fine. Let the tight ends fall,
and then let them get CEH and be disappointed. So that one was a big miss for me. So he's part of the reason why I'm letting you guys talk me into it. So one of the so I'm gonna kind of put you guys on the spot right now. So is there a draft position where you'll go RB first? I think throughout the industry, the talk is the consensus unanimous 101 is Jonathan Taylor. Could you be tempted to go Jonathan Taylor in the first round if you draw in a redraft league the 101, or are you staying close, staying true to your 0 RB heart? Dan, start us up on that one.
I will not be drafting JT at number 1, only because if you're drafting him at 1, you basically have to hope that he replicates exactly what happened last year, where he plays all 17 games, where he's the focal point of the offense. And Indy's facing a lot of quarterback questions right now. Carson Wentz probably isn't going to be back. Who's going to play quarterback for them next year? So I just think if there's really there's no upside to the pick, you can only be disappointed. I mean, he's either going to do exactly what he did and he's going to be the RB1, or he's going to do less than that and he wasn't going to be worth the 101 pick. So I just don't think that in with how many options are available, that I would lean towards taking JT at 1. I get why you would, because he was the best running back last year. I just don't see him. It's going to be hard for him to repeat. And not to say he can't. And the same thing with Cooper Kupp. It doesn't have to just be running backs. Cooper Kupp probably isn't going to, be the Triple Crown winner next year either. I just, with my 101, I just want more from it, I guess. I just don't feel comfortable taking a guy that he has to perform like elite, or it's not worth the pick.
How about you, Cal?
I love it. Dan, who are you taking 1?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Who am I taking 1? Right now, if I had to pick?
Yeah, you have to right now on the clock.
On the
OTC.
Chase.
Yes.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. So I'm going Justin Jefferson. That to me is going to be the interesting debate over the course of the next little while. And I think I would say Heath is the one that sort of convinced me. The difference there could be volume, and the overall pie in Minnesota could be bigger. But so much can change over the offseason. So I obviously reserve the right to change it. But Justin Jefferson to me is the guy that I'm taking there right now. And I understand it. I understand it. If JT's on the clock, you don't want to, or if he's available and you can take him, there's so much FOMO that you're going to have right there. I get it. But every time I've been tempted to do that, I've regretted it every time. So it's one of those things for me. I don't like to trade my first round picks in Dynasty. And I don't like to walk away with a first round running back despite whatever the temptation is.
That's interesting. And plus the fact that when's the last time an RB1 repeated?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, Todd Gurley had the season in 2017 and had a stellar season in 2018, but he missed a couple games at the end of the season, which I think he ended up dropping to the RB3. But how many guys just fall off at that, So that is fascinating. That is fascinating because I was going to throw out, in my next question, I was throwing out Cooper Kupp as the possible 102, just because everything looks like it's returning with him.
Mm-hmm.
He's still going to have Stafford. He's, and it's got that great, there's no other big pass catcher because even if they re-sign OBJ, he's not going to be around. I think he's not going to be around all season, and Robert Woods may not be back until halfway through the season. So that's why I'm thinking he's still going to get 12 to 15 targets a game, and it's going to be sick. But though I can see Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase is so sexy, and I love Jefferson being in a dome. So that especially during those crazy those weeks, because I think one of the tough parts with him was I think it was week 17. They were in Green Bay, and Cousins got COVID, and then there was just a bad combo. So that's when I think I was playing the Justin Jefferson guy that week, and it was not good. So for him, thankfully, and that's why AJ Dillon did. So I got a question. Does the strategy, the zero RB strategy, change from super flex to single QB? Cal?
The zero RB part, not necessarily. The strategy itself does change. Yes, I am definitely. I would never take a quarterback in the first probably 10 rounds in almost any draft, because I feel pretty confident I'm going to get somebody, and usually an older player that people for whatever reason are down on, like Aaron Rodgers. People hated last year for whatever reason. He was like a 10th round pick in one QB leagues, and I'm like, okay, great. I'll get Aaron Rodgers. But yeah, Superflex, I want to walk away with one of those. Then all that changes, and I want to walk away with Mahomes, Allen, Herbert, Murray, Burrow. One of those in the top, maybe Lamar Jackson. There's like a top six, right? Six or seven that you feel really, really good about in that first round. But then, same thing. I'm going to hammer tight ends. I'm going to hammer wide receivers. I'm going to hammer, try to get a quarterback like Kirk Cousins later, or Ryan Tannehill, who's got like a little bit of later ADP. Maybe Derek Carr, people are sleeping on right now, I think could represent a value.
Especially McDaniel.
The one guy that's slipping so much right now that kind of excites me, and I'm curious to see where his ADP is going to go. People hate Josh Jacobs so much, like just hate him with all their guts. And I don't get it, because he's got such a great floor right now. That his role's pretty safe. I mean, maybe McDaniel uses another running back to catch passes with, but if he's got like a 6th round ADP, which it looks like in dynasty leagues, it's definitely, I don't know where it's going to land in redraft, but that's the kind of running back I'm going to be targeting, and I'd be tempted to take there.
That's interesting, because especially considering the fact that he started to see passes out of the backfield the latter part of the season, and we know Josh McDaniels likes to throw to his running backs. So it's interesting. How about you, Dan?
Yeah, I agree with Cal said. If it's super flex, I'm gonna hit the quarterbacks early. I try to get two early, so I don't have to worry about that position. In one quarterback leagues, I'm waiting. Like in last year, I waited until round 13 to end up with Matthew Stafford as my quarterback. So you can wait in one quarterback leagues for quarterbacks. They always go. There's always some guy at the end that's going to produce for you. But for super flex, I'll hit quarterback, then tight end, and then receiver, and then running back. It's a little different, but the general structure of the strategy is basically the same.
So in single QB, could you be tempted to go QB early with this because of this strategy? Either one. Cal, I know you mentioned talking about it, but how crazy?
Like if Josh Allen is there, like at some ridiculous, like I don't know, 6th, 7th round, something like that, somewhere like there where it's like, okay, crazy value. Like I can either take whoever, like Hunter Renfrow or Josh Allen. Like, I'll take Josh Allen, but typically there's enough in a 1 QB league that I sort of don't want to lock myself into that spot, right? Like, I sort of don't want to necessarily say, like, this is my guy. I want to have a little bit more flexibility. So I avoid it, but like, there's a certain point where it makes too much sense. If you get Pat Mahomes there or whatever, it makes too much sense at some point. But in general, no.
And how about Dan? I'm sorry, I didn't.
Oh, that's right. No, I'll never do that. Never. You see, there's some guys like taking Mahomes or Allen in like the third, fourth, fifth round. I'd rather go out and get like a Mike Evans who's just going to give me 1,000 yards and 5 TDs, and no one likes him, but he's just boring. He's just going to give you that production that he always gives you no matter what every year, and just call it a day. Honestly, so no, I'll never. There's just too much. There's too many options that will get you like into the top. Like I mentioned before, like Stafford, Rodgers were all like 10th, 11th round picks, and ended up being top 7 QBs. So there's no reason for me to ever draft a quarterback early.
Yeah, and I got Brady like late in so many leagues, and
people hate Brady. Like, people don't want Brady, but he literally just throws up 300 points, and it's crazy.
It was it was crazy. It was crazy. Muy loco.
Stafford's another one too, right? Stafford's another one that's like you can get the very end.
Yeah, and you got 41 TDs out of him. So I'll take it. And all day. How about redraft or dynasty? Does the strategy change there? Dan?
No, it doesn't. I think actually, if anything, dynasty I lean more towards zeroing back, and that's just because of the lifespan of the players. Running back, you're probably going to get maybe 3, 4, 5 elite years out of them. If you get a good receiver, they're going to go 7 to 10 years. Giving you that wide receiver 1 production, like Devontae Adams, he's been wide receiver 1 for basically our entire lives. So I'd rather use my dynasty picks on someone that is going to be around for a while, that's going to be on my team, that I can build around for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, rather than take a running back who might be elite and will obviously be better than who I pick, but the shelf life on them is much, much shorter. And that's only if they stay healthy. If you got a guy that is awesome, and suddenly he tears an Achilles or an ACL or something, and then he's done. And obviously that can happen with any player, but as we stated before, running backs are more prone to injury. So I'll take that tight end, that quarterback, that wide receiver, that the guy that's going to be there for a lot longer time than the position that has the shorter shelf life.
How about you, Cal?
Yeah, 100%. And Dan nailed it. It's value, right? Like, wide receivers are going to hold their value for longer. Devontae Adams is like 3 years older than Todd Gurley. Okay, so like, it tells you how they hold their value to, or whatever he is. But
oh my God,
yeah. And so you look at that and you say, like, okay, if I hit on this player, if he is who I think he is, so like Jalen Waddle or somebody like that, like Jalen Waddle is 23 years old, right? 20, like Josh Jacobs is also 23. Who do you think is going to have more? Or actually, he just turned 24, like last month. Who's going to have more value for longer, Josh Jacobs or Jalen Waddle? Just who is more likely to hold their value? I guess I should say for longer. It's going to be those wide receivers. So, yeah, I definitely in Dynasty, I'm leaning into this even harder, like Dan said. And when I get to the championship window, you can buy some of these older running backs for cheap. Like, typically it doesn't cost you as much to get somebody like right now, like as good as he can be. Derrick Henry doesn't cost you very much in Dynasty. It doesn't take out near as much to buy a 28, 29-year-old Derrick Henry, whatever he is, as it is for, let's say, Cooper Kupp, who's 28, almost basically the same age. The price is very different because people know that any minute Derrick Henry is done. Like, he falls off the map, and that's not going to happen with Cooper Kupp. Oh, you're muted.
You're muted, Jorge.
Oops.
I don't know what happened there.
I do that all the time.
The interesting you were talking about that because I had James Conner on a league and I couldn't give him away for anything less than a second. The best I could get was a second round pick, and rebuilding. What was it? Productive. What
struggle. Yeah.
Productive struggle.
Ryan McCall. Yep.
Oh yeah, that team is productive, struggling like crazy. No first or second round picks. I had to go crazy. I had to trade everybody. But so that the way they hold the value is incredible, and I think that's right on the Dynasty.
Perfect example for this is Christian McCaffrey. Like, everyone loved him. He was running back one for multiple years. He's 25 years old. He's coming off 2 injury-riddled seasons already. I mean, his peak is gone at 25. I mean, it's crazy how sudden like these guys will just drop. I mean, obviously, he'll probably bounce back if he plays, but and then you have receivers. You have like Diggs and Adams and Hill who are already 28, 27, like 29, and they're still going strong. It's just like from a value standpoint, you can't beat that. The extra, 4, 5, 6, 7 years of good, productive seasons that you're going to get from these other guys and not these running backs.
And that's the difference in redraft and Dynasty is value and production are different. And that's Dan and I are both talking production or value there. And that means like on the open trade market in your league, you're more likely to get more value back for wide receivers. It's case by case, and every league has a different economy, but it's not production. Like I have no doubt that Derrick Henry is going to have great production, but you are not going to get that value. And that's the balance in Dynasty, is trying to keep that value and score the points. And that's the balance that you have to be constantly. Am I competing? Am I rebuilding? To me, that's the strategy that makes it fun.
Love that. Could not have said that better. And since you taught me how to clip these things, I may have to pull that one out. So I'm going to mark the time. So here's the big question. What round, ideally, are you taking a running back first? Your first running back, Dan? Is there a recipe, or is it change draft to draft?
It's still like a go with the flow thing, depending on the draft and who's available. But I'm probably going to start looking at running backs probably around 7, round 8.
Wow.
Yeah, because I'll get my 3 receivers, maybe 4 for a flex spot, like Cal said earlier. Get my quarterback and my tight end, and then maybe start looking at them, but not before then.
How about you, Cal?
It's usually right after whatever the perceived drop off is, where everybody shifts focus all of a sudden, and now they're hitting wide receivers more, and they're hitting these other positions, and everybody starts ignoring those running backs. And it's usually like sometime like within the next couple of rounds from that. So like last year, it was somewhere around maybe Miles Sanders was in that, like that was 4th round. He was going, Josh Jacobs is there too. So somewhere in that area. Cause after that was like Chase Edmonds and Myles Gaskin and ETN and Trey Sermon and Javonte Williams. And there's some Ronald Jones and that's everybody wanted somebody before that, right? They wanted to have their 2 running backs before you got to that spot. And then they shift. And that was about the point where it's like, okay, I can kind of pick my guys here from that point forward and try to target them. So I don't have it around 6, 7, 8. It just kind of depends on how that value falls in that draft. And if I'm in a draft with Dan, my goal is always to draft one after he does. So
every time.
So it's a game of chicken.
It is. Yeah. Every league we're in, it's always been a game of chicken.
Oh, I love it. That's, oh man. Do you guys kind of trade off on who wins?
I think Cal's up 2-1 in leagues.
Oh, okay.
Man.
I know we did that mock with Front Yard Fantasy the other day. I don't remember. I think you pulled the trigger before I did.
I pulled the trigger 1 pick before you did. So technically, you won.
Oh, awesome.
That was my signal.
Yes.
So Cal, you mentioned that Josh Jacobs is a guy that you think of, which I think that's a great suggestion for that first guy. Dan, who would be the type of running back that you're looking for at the point where you're picking in round 7 or 8?
So basically, for what I would do, I would look at guys maybe that are in like committees, and so someone like a Devin Singletary. He's a guy that didn't really have like a lot of, renown going into last year. Everyone thought Zach Moss was going to be the guy there. Basically, just take whatever guy they don't want from that committee and hope that he beats them out, like Singletary ended up doing. So someone like that, someone like receiving back like a couple of years ago, like Naeem Hines, someone that catches the ball a ton, like third down backs, like Cohen in Chicago a couple of years ago. Those kind of backs where they have that role where they're gonna catch some balls out of the backfield, especially in PPR, and so they're gonna give you that point floor that you're looking for from that spot.
I will say, Dan, when you mentioned picking in round 7 or 8, it kind of caught my breath for a second there. I started to get a little lightheaded. It was not a fun feeling. So I can imagine that it just takes some incredible discipline to wait and wait and wait. I mean, especially game of chicken between you guys.
Yeah.
And I'll just say, like, Josh Jacobs probably goes before I want to. Like, he's probably ends up bumping up my guesses somewhere in that 4th round, and I'll be, not thinking about that yet. Somebody like Tony Pollard, that's the other guy that's going to go a little bit late. That's who could find himself in a great situation. Honestly, without even injuries happening, he could find himself in a pretty productive situation there. And there's always guys like you mentioned James Conner, and like I don't know if this is just Dynasty, but he's going in the hundreds, like it's 107 overall is his ADP. And that's the kind of guy. Kenneth Gainwell over there in Philly, what if he ends up in a bigger role? Those are kind of the guys that I'm looking at a little bit lower, where Khalil Herbert is one of my favorites right now, because he's a guy that we think about Alexander Madison, right? And he's kind of the hot name, and he'll have a much higher ADP. What's the difference between him and Khalil Herbert? I think Khalil Herbert could be really good too. So those types of guys that could find themselves either it's a trade-off between like Tony Pollard, who's got a role in the offense now, and then later I want to fill in with some guys that if the right thing happens, they're going to hit big.
Awesome. So is there a set number of running backs you want to come away with? Let's say a 16-round regular redraft league. How many running backs do you want to have on your roster, Dan?
I'll probably, in a 16 round, I'll probably end up swinging at about 4 or 5.
Okay. How about Cal?
It'll probably be the position that I have the most of by the end of the draft, because that's the other thing is I'm going to probably feel really good about 5 wide receivers, one tight end, 1 quarterback, assuming it's a 1 QB league, and then the rest I want to swing for running backs. I mean, sometimes I'll fall in love with somebody who's going late and want to make sure I get certain wide receiver, but other than that, I want as many. Again, it's that focus thing, right? Like I got these positions, and it's not that like I can feel confident there, right? Like I feel like, why do I need to waste spots on my bench for players I can't play anyway? Let me take a few more hacks at this, get some more at bats and see if I can get a couple hits.
Love it. Now, Cal, you mentioned really going crazy on running backs in the waiver wire. Is that aggressive mentality? Is that how to attack it? Do you feel like you attack that position even more because of the zero RB approach?
Right, because my attention is focused on I know I've got this hole, so I'm not even approaching the waiver as like, here are all these players that are good. Like if a wide receiver pops and it's just great value, fine. But I know I've got that $100 fab budget, and I'm dedicating it to running backs because that's the hole that I've got on my roster. Outside of, if I get an injury, something like that, somebody I draft tears their ACL the next day or something, and I got to fill a wide receiver, like, okay, now I got to think about that a little bit more now too, probably. But most is going to be focused on that running back spot.
How about you, Dan?
Yeah, absolutely agree. Basically, it's just taking more at bats. Honestly, is what you're doing. You're focusing, taking that focus from the draft and just basically putting out the waiver wire. I mean, you're not going to be draft or spending any money on receivers if we're taking, all our top picks are going to be receivers or tight ends or something. If you draft Kelsey, you're not going to be worried about, waiver tight ends. So you're just giving yourself more opportunities to get, get hits on those players that you need to get that running back floor in order to get the points you need to win. So it's basically just taking everything basically we've been saying and just applying it to the waiver wire instead of the draft.
No, it's awesome. And that's the thing. It's like, yeah, would you rather be spending money, taking your, spending big money on maybe a running back who's like a Khalil Herbert, who may be on the waiver wire, and David Montgomery just got hurt? Would you rather be doing that or taking your swing at the Cole Kmet for, to try and fill your tight end spot? And, I know the Dynasty community expects him to take a step forward, but last year he was just a guy for the most part. So I can see that. You don't, last year he felt like just a guy. Right. Oh, you don't think he's going to?
No, I don't. Like I said, I think it happened, but no, it's not we overrate snap percentage sometimes on these guys, and I want to see targets. Like if you're on the field and you're just running routes, you're just doing cardio. I don't want guys doing cardio. I don't get points for calories burned while they're running routes. I want guys doing targets.
To me, that's the thing. I was really focusing last season early on percent, target percentage. And it's like, the guy's 33% target percentage, but he's only getting 8 targets. And this other guy's getting 25% target percentage, but he's getting 12 targets because his team's throwing the ball. I'll take the 12 targets. Please. Yeah. All day long, especially with Cooper Kupp.
I have to like make that calorie line into like a banner and just like hang it. You don't get points for burning calories. right up here somewhere, and that's gonna be the motto for this year. I got it now. I'm locking that in.
So the last one, is there any tweak that you guys talked a little bit about hits and misses earlier? Is there any tweak to the strategy that you're kind of excited to apply in 2022 other than trying to, win the game of chicken with each other when you're in a draft?
I think that I'll be looking more towards rookies, especially at running back. I think that people there have to be like a certain set of conditions for rookie running backs to succeed, but in general they're usually lower than the name guys. And if they get into a situation like Cal said, where a guy gets injured or something, or they can call out a role even without anyone getting injured, then that's someone that I would like to take.
How about you, Cal?
The biggest thing I got to figure out, I think, right now is where I'm comfortable with tight ends, because that, again, is another big part of the strategy for me. So, I love Mark Andrews and what he did this year. But what does the passing game do in Baltimore? Do they come back to – it was absurd, the leap that they had. Did they come more back to the middle like where they were? I don't necessarily expect that, but – I love Mark Andrews. Kyle Pitts, is he going to score 1 touchdown a year for the rest of his life? I hope not.
Oh, please no.
And so Kelsey may still end up being a pretty viable, guy that I like at ADP, because I might even get him. Maybe I don't even have to spend a first round pick on him this year. So that's the biggest one that I've got that I kind of have to figure out, and then it's honing in on like that ADP and where. Having that plan going in, and the only thing I want to hold, I guess, is maybe trying to figure out that strategy sooner, so that my early drafts look a lot more like my later drafts.
Awesome. How about you, Dan?
That's a good question. I'm not sure, honestly, to be fair. It's really going to be, pretty much a take it as it comes kind of thing. I think doing it that way, I can see there's so many variables to it. I'm not going to try to formulate until I'm probably close to being there.
Plus, there's so many. We've still got free agency to go through.
Yeah.
We still got the draft. We're 5 months from really starting, any kind of serious draft, at least redraft side. I mean, Dynasty will be its own separate animal on, with rookie drafts and everything like that. Mis amigos. Okay. Well, do you got time for one quick fun one?
Oh yeah.
So I threw in there, I always love to ask people about tacos. So first off, Dan, were you able to, can I get a good taco in Mobile?
No.
Okay.
No, it's really big seafood base. You can get like a great oyster or a great po' boy. Tacos, as far like from what I went to eat, not so much.
Okay. So I gotta make sure once I'm, I mean, I've definitely had my fair share of po' boys in Louisiana, so so I could just go over there. So now I have it from New Orleans Saints beat writer that you can get great tacos in Nolans. So any favorites from your that you've encountered, Cal?
I'm so not picky with my food, and being a guy from New Orleans is so strange. I guess like everybody takes pride in their food, and I'm like the least picky person. Like I don't care. Like just I mostly, if I'm gonna go like actually like, hey, something I really want to go get, like there's a restaurant called Supreme Grill in New Orleans that's downtown. It's just outside of downtown, and the quesadillas are unbelievable there. I haven't had the tacos, but my guess is they are just as good. And it's like a local place. Like people go there a lot. Like they hang out, but it's hopping down there every night, and it's unbelievable food. So if you're ever in New Orleans, go check out Supreme Grill.
Oh, you got me hungry. You got me hungry. Awesome, my brother. Well, guys, thank you so much. Esto fue un gran placer, an incredible pleasure, un gran éxito. Dan, I know you teased it a little bit, but let's close up shop. What are some of the things where they can find you, and what are they looking forward to?
All right, so obviously you can find me on Twitter at EagleDanFF. I am doing a lot of stuff Dynasty-wise for Champions Round. Follow them at Champions Round. We're doing right now a combine preview of all the positions. We're going to be doing a ton of that Dynasty content and some really exciting stuff coming down the pipeline, as well as doing some social media and a little show over at In Between Media. So there are a bunch of great people over there. I'll be doing debuting a new segment there soon. So I'll be on the lookout for that. And that's what's up with me.
Awesome. How about you, Cal?
So on Tuesday nights, I do a show with Tyler Karp, Ask DLF, where we just take questions for an hour and a half, 2 hours, something like that. And it's incredible. The chat room is awesome. They ask like a ton of questions, and it really is a place where you can learn a lot about strategy, and just you could ask a bunch of questions there, and that's literally what we're there for. And I have so much fun with that. And then the Dynasty Refinery that you mentioned typically releases on Saturday. There is probably not going to be one this week. Some scheduling issues with trying to get between me and the guests right now, but definitely the week after. I got some really, really cool some cool things that are going to be released. Follow me on Twitter, and I'll have some previews and some announcements there on that. So
yeah, familia, please follow them on Twitter. You got them. You can find me at Jorge Martin 17, because eso es todo for our show. Again, thank you to Fantasy Points for getting us into the media group. Thank you to Anchor for putting our podcast on Apple, Google, Spotify. Also, thank you to YouTube. We're live. We're still live. Please make sure to give us a like and subscribe. Also, you can find original content at familiaffb.com, and Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at Familia FFB. So otra vez to my guests, un millón de gracias, and everybody keep enjoying that combine. Free agency's coming next week. Actually, in 2 weeks. And remember, como siempre, todos somos familia. Salud.